Welcome to the 19th season of the NItwits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Nittany Lions and the only show of its kind in the state. Our NItwits panel features Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com. Between them, they've covered Penn State for 70 years. The NItwits are hosted by WTAJ Sports Director Alex Colley, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NItwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona, just ask rental, buy what you want, rent what you need. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics, Dr. Reed and Solani provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor specializing in distributing a full line of food service products to restaurants, schools, and institutions throughout central Pennsylvania. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
No, it wasn't a dream. The Penn State Nittany Lions knock off the second-ranked Buckeyes 24-21. Welcome to the Nitwits. After a brief nap following the game, we've got Neil Riddell, the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com. I'm your host, Alex Colley, and a Nittany Lion who knows a thing or two about big wins. Jonas Nasi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, Penn State's a program that's had a lot of big wins, but this one has to stack up there, and it's huge on so many levels.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest regular season wins that they've ever had. Obviously, they have such a storied history, and you start with the national championship teams in those games, and at Pitt, of course, in '81. But barring that, I think this can be in the conversation, especially considering where the program is right now and what it needed that sort of signature win to get everybody believing that James Franklin is the right guy to move this program forward and to beat Ohio State in that kind of environment. They're gonna taste this for a long time.
I can't remember a more improbable win. Everybody was asking me to kind of frame it, and that's the way I did. And the other thing that I thought was, listen, James Franklin, he framed it amazingly after the game when he talked about what that win meant for his players, his coaches, the community. He hit just the right notes, in my view, going back to the scandal and everything Penn State had been through and what this means in terms of kind of establishing Penn State back and clearly the difficult personal stuff that he went through with his brother-in-law passing away. They did a great job on the field, but I thought the way he handled things afterward with class and really just framing it in a great way of what it meant to the program.
Right, yeah, I agree with you because he referenced that. He referenced the fan support, the Letterman, the guys that came before, and then the guys that are going to come after, meaning, the recruits. I thought that was such a big game, like you said, on so many levels because of that. The big stage was there, the Ohio State recruits, and now it's like, well, wait, now we have that opportunity, okay? We beat arguably the best team in the country. So now we're in the ball game, we have the fight, and now we have all the belief, not only within the team, but with the fan base as well.
A lot of people felt that maybe next year was the year we were going to see Penn State take those steps, but they still had to beat Ohio State and Michigan at some point here to establish their credibility. And to do it now, to play the way they did 2 years ago against Ohio State, what they've established now at home against Ohio State, I just think just really, really important. They're going to get a lot of mileage out of this.
One more thing on that is, you look at it, we are really only a player or two away from flirting with the top 10. I mean, we could have one loss at this point in time with a team that's in the top 4. So I mean, I'm just saying, like we're right there. Even though it hasn't looked that pretty, win's a win.
Well,
you know?
look at the improvements since that game.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about perspective, too, because this team has yet to play anything remotely close to a perfect game.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that as a Neil's wet blanket. I mean, this was a game where they played poorly at times.
Yes.
But you know what I'd like to say? I have to borrow a phrase from Bill O'Brien. This team's a bunch of fighters. I mean, they come out
and said.
well, that's exactly what he said. He said there, but
Paraphrase.
how many games this year outside of Michigan were they in a tough spot, even at Pitt, and they came scratching and clawing back? And you know what? Whatever you want to talk about coaching, to me, Joe, you could probably address this better than anybody. That's a sign of good coaching, that your guys are not giving up when the chips are down, and these guys
Absolutely. That, you know, you could see now that this team over the last couple of years, a little bit more buy-in, a little bit more. Now everyone's playing together. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's bought in. Everyone's fighting for the same cause. So it's not a separated locker room anymore. And the way I see it, it really showed yesterday. Look, McSorley, there was times that he was running out of there immediately off of a three-step drop. I mean, we didn't play all that well up front, but, think about it. They're playing with probably the best defensive line in the country, in two sets of them. So, again, that goes to show how good he is, how good the coaching staff is to get them where they are in the positions to have an opportunity to win that football game.
You get the sense that there's a lot of bond developing, coach to player, assistant coach to player, and I really think that you can see a program that has come together.
All right, well, we're going to take a break here, but don't worry, we've got a lot more on Penn State's win over the second-ranked Buckeyes. We'll talk special teams play and a big defensive effort by the Nittany Lions when the Nitwits returns.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona, just ask rental, buy what you want, rent what you need.
I'm Penn State basketball assistant Ross Condon, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Welcome back. Special was a word we heard a lot in the post-game interviews, and whether it was a blocked punt or a blocked field goal, special teams really turned the tide in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Penn State had a field goal blocked, muffed a punt.
Safety on a bad snap.
Yeah, so that was going to be the storyline of the game with 14 minutes left. But Marcus Allen, what a super athlete he has been, and to block that, and Haley to run away from and score, and just the fine line between winning and losing. Joey made a great point here. If Reed holds the interception, which he probably should have. With four and a half minutes to go, maybe Penn State loses. Maybe Penn State doesn't drive 95 yards at that point to win the game. But the special teams really came up huge.
Yeah, you watched that, and we talked a little bit earlier about the punts, and it was really difficult. These kind of games are the ones that are really tough to field punts as a returner. Those balls start dropping out of the sky and the wind swirling. And we talked about Penn State making a good move there by putting Garrity back in there to field those. It was okay because a fair catch was all right at that time. This game was going back and forth, and it was more ball security than it was big return.
Yeah, what was a little bit overlooked was Cam Brown. Here's a guy who they were going to redshirt, ends up getting in there to the starting lineup when the linebackers were hurt.
Right.
These linebackers come back, Bell and Kabinda. All of a sudden, you have a guy out there on special teams who's played a lot of football, and he comes in, and I really thought that block punt in a lot of ways was a turning point in the game, because that got the crowd back into it. Sure. The crowd was on the verge of, and rightfully so. And all of a sudden, the crowd got back into it. And you talk about how great the special teams was. I think they really fed off the crowd as well.
I did, but I think the story of the game was really their defensive performance. They really only allowed Ohio State to score 16 points. When you look at what the other facets, and this defense is playing, and he's gone really out of his way. James has to credit Brent Pry lately, and the substitution, the speed that they have on defense, and the way they're trying to build it.
And to narrow it down even more, to me, again, tremendous team effort, top to bottom, and coaching staff, but. What I saw was the biggest difference in this win for us was the defensive front. They rotated guys in there with Kevin. I have to give Kevin his credit. He made a lot of plays in there, even though his name may not show up on the sacks or whatever, made a lot of plays. Those guys got so much pressure, and they collapsed that pocket and contained them so well. I mean, Barrett hurt us year after year, but yesterday that front four was dominant, and in my opinion was the difference in the ball game.
Well, and it also, we're seeing it right now with that tackle by Kabinda, that allowed the linebackers to make plays.
Absolutely.
How many games this year have we seen the safeties being the leading tacklers? Now all of a sudden Bell comes back, 19 tackles. Kabinda had 11? Bowen had 10 or 11. I mean, this is the way a defense is supposed to work, but you're right. D-line, unsung heroes. Here's the other thing. They've been rotating a ton of guys on that D-line all year. How many times now have they come up huge late in games? I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think you have to give them, Coach Chaos Spencer, Pry, all those guys, a lot of credit for what they're doing there.
Yeah, it was sack to finish that. Right?
Yeah,
I mean those guys. But all game long, you can see, especially the second half, they just really smashed that down inside and did not allow him to have enough comfortable time by bringing four.
Well, Schwann and Sickles was suspended for the first half, came off the bench to play a great game, and Schwann is really making his presence felt. And I think Bell and the leadership that those two linebackers bring, and Bell's a great player. I mean, if he can stay healthy, and he has shown that through the past couple of years, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy.
Well, that's where you see what they also have been missing the last however many games. The thing that I talked to you about in the press box, Neil, too, and Joe, and I'm sure, Alex, you saw it too. This team, even if they're not tackling well, they are hitting people. They are lighting people up. It is fun to watch. It's not fun to watch when they're missing tackles like they were at times. But, wow, do they get after it and lay some hits.
We've seen special teams, we talked defense. Is there something that, is maybe being overlooked because of, the spectacular play we saw from them?
I don't know if you want to say it's overlooked, but I mean, we've touched on it. I really believe that the buy-in and the commitment. There's so many people, and I've heard it by living there, by being a letterman. I don't know about this guy, meaning Coach Franklin. I don't know about, how they're doing things. I don't know if we're going the right direction. So many question marks. And, loyalty, and I could say, I hate to say I told you so, but I am being very loyal, and I am going to tell you I told you so. Hang in there. He was behind, it was against all odds from the day he walked in there. And, people were being impatient. That's a society we live in. Everyone's impatient. But, the thing is, we're sticking with it. Enjoy the process, and know results will come. And hopefully this win and what goes on now is that we understand that we've got to stick with our guy. We've got to stay behind him because they're doing the right thing up there. I mean, he had an extremely tough job and still has a huge job ahead of him to do. I mean, day in and day out, those guys are up there grinding. I know that personally just from being there and then seeing them and knowing those guys as the staff. They're doing one heck of a job up there, and really I think that is what maybe is missed in the whole game and the performance.
Well, one quick note. I mean, people have to understand, you could love Joe Paterno and still be an ardent James Franklin supporter. Absolutely. This is not an either-or proposition, which some people seem to have been trying to make it. It's not. You could have been an O'Brien fan, Paterno, Rip Engel, whoever. Right. You can still like this guy and what he's doing. It's not exactly the same as Joe, but look at what the results were when people were patient, as Joe said, and finally things paid off for them.
All right, well, it is halftime here on the Nitwits, and any coach will tell you there's always room for improvement. We are going to nitpick this game when we return.
The Nitwits are brought to you by the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Selaney Orthodontics, Dr. Reed and Selaney provide orthodontics for children and adults.
to the Nitwits, a roundtable discussion of Penn State football.
Welcome back. Not to take away from the Nittany Lions' upset win, but there is always room for improvement. So what areas stood out?
Well, I think the receivers, and Joey, I'm sure, will defend the receivers no matter what.
Absolutely.
But I think the receivers need to do a little better job with some of the 50-50 balls. I know Ohio State has a great reputation for cornerbacks and whatnot. And I think they got to go to Godwin a little bit more. I mean, this guy's a real proven receiver. You know, you only had 4 catches among your wideouts. So I think that's one area that they continue to have to develop.
Yeah, and I would go back to what I was talking about earlier. I mean, they are hitting hard, but they're not always tackling as well as they should. And that's just something where as the season goes along, you have to start wrapping these guys up. And again, early in the game, special teams, they had some things. You know, Joe, you made a great point about how, off the air, about how tough it is to catch the punt on these windy days. But maybe then you go in and just have your best fielding guy out there, but you cannot allow those special teams errors that they had, the bad snaps, a low line drive kick. Those things really hurt you in this kind of game. But at the end of the day, that was bounced out by the positives.
We're finding ways to win. Okay, that's what good football teams and programs do. They just adversity and then they overcome. Maybe an area that I would love to see us, and this is just going to be personnel and time, but a more consistent running game and a handling offensive line. Now, I mean that has to do with personnel, but even though we're sort of in the negative mode, I've got to really give credit to Moorhead and what he has been able to do with the run game and how effective he's been against a tremendous Ohio State. I don't think people understand how good that Ohio State defense is. Yeah. I mean, every position. So to be able to run the ball enough and move the ball to score what we did is, I got to give a lot of credit there. But I would say if there's some improvement part, I would think just consistently running the football, even though he did at times, he did a great job, and that was all scheme.
Yeah, I'd say Paris Palmer deserves a little shout out, and the offensive line. They only allowed 1 sack, and Paris was sealing the edge and got Barkley off early, and then Penn State was able to establish some field position early in that game. The other thing, and I think this will come with experience, there were about 3 balls loose on special teams or on I don't know how 25 got the ball back for Ohio State, that maybe with a little bit more experience, Penn State might recover those fumbles.
Sure. Yeah, and I would, listen, Trace McSorley, this kid is an absolute winner. I mean, it's amazing what he does in the clutch. But sometimes you wish that he misses an easy throw to Gesicki for a TD. Now he makes up for it by scoring. But I think it's just part of his evolution. I mean, you figured after as well as he played the last game and a half that he might take a little bit of a step back. And I thought at times he did. He made the plays when he needed to win, but he has to be more consistent. And I think he would be the first guy to say that.
Yeah, I'd take that guy all day.
Can they run him 19 times, though? I mean, I think Ohio State did a pretty good job sort of tricking him in, giving him some looks, and then he would take off and they would close on him.
Yeah, but you also look at 8 of 23, Neil. I mean, that's, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he was the ultimate game management player at that time. I mean, he threw balls away that he could not take we couldn't be in a 3rd and 17. Just things I saw when he would come up out and press and work up into the pocket a couple times and then take off. Hey, those 2 and 3 yard gains as opposed to a 7, 8, 9 yard loss kept us in front of the chains. I'll take that guy all day regardless. His numbers, to me, he's a guy that the numbers don't really match up to the gameplay.
Well, his pocket presence too.
Absolutely.
I mean, listen, if anybody would have set the over under at 1 sack or whatever. I mean, they gave up 1 sack in that game. That was amazing, and that speaks to the offensive line, and it also speaks to his pocket presence, which we have not seen around here in a long time.
Sure. Barkley did a good job. They kept him in a couple times on pass protection, and Sanders, too, for a freshman, came in and it was able to handle his guy.
Yep.
Okay, well, when the Nitwits return, it is prediction time as Penn State heads to Purdue. We'll be right back.
The Nitwits are brought to you by W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor specializing in distributing a full line of food service products to restaurants, schools, and institutions throughout central Pennsylvania. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Welcome back. Like the Nittany Lions, it is on to Purdue for us Nitwits, and of course we're going to be looking ahead to the next game, or next Saturday, noon kickoff. Purdue is a team that gave Nebraska a run for their money a little bit under an interim coach. So how do we see this one faring?
Well, we're ready for our
There
pitch?
is no Nitwit of the Week.
Okay, yeah.
I would have. Let's just make sure we understand. I would have been.
Yeah.
Because I would have taken.
You need to
I would
take
have
that
taken
up
Penn
with
State
Sandy
by-
Barber
Okay.
because we
I would have taken them by
practically
3.
begged her
so.
to make a prediction. We knew she'd pick Penn State, but she didn't want to kind
Well,
of.
we won by 3, right? Well, then I would have hit it right on.
Yeah, the
regardless,
chair
so.
would be in first place.
Okay, so
anyway,
we'll-
hey, you got to figure there's going to be a little emotional hangover here, and the bar has now been raised. So let's see if Penn State can meet that. I would fully expect them to beat Purdue. I'll go ahead and pick. I'm going to say Penn State 30, Purdue 16.
I'll go next. I'll cede some of my time to say congrats to Joe, assistant coach at State High, 8-0 and rolling
Thank
at
you
this
very
point.
much.
You guys with a huge win
Appreciate
over
that.
Harrisburg.
Yep.
Hey, listen, Purdue coaching change. I think they got a little bit of juice playing against Nebraska, and I wonder if that won't fade a little bit. The one thing I worry about with Penn State, these noon games on the road, the atmosphere is probably going to be dead, but I'll still go with Penn State. I'm going to say 38-14. There you go.
I'll go here. You know, I know how this is. I mean, a lot of times it's a trap game. I don't think there is any trap game for us. I mean, we're always fighting. So that's one of the good things about being in the position we were and getting to where we're getting to. You know, big win, but you know they're practicing today. This afternoon they're going to be going out there practicing. So yeah, it was a big win. It was last night. Now we're really on to the next. You know, this is a fighting team. They're fighters. Are we going to maybe be behind by a score, or maybe even 10 points? We absolutely could be. Nothing to worry about. I like Penn State 28, Purdue 13.
All right, we mentioned trap game. I think it's going to go the opposite way. I think Penn State just completely comes out, builds off this momentum. I'm thinking in the realm of 42-13 Nittany Lions.
Going high.
Squeezing me on the high end.
Wow. Alex.
They're saying they're on
Taking
Purdue.
his gloves off.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you know, it's heating up now. So, as Saquon Barkley said, the only thing that's going to be reeling after this Ohio State game is free Dunkin' Donuts this week, which everyone will be happy about.
That's
yeah. All right, we want to thank you for watching as you take a look at the standings. It's of course the hosts and then Neil tied at 2, but it's anyone's race from here on out.
2 on 1.
That's right. So, like I said, it takes 2 people to match up.
I
to
think
your
I should have had.
knowledge.
I got to put my name in there though, because I would have had
We'll
that
get a
last
trace
one there.
ball in there.
Let's
for
do
next
that.
week. Okay. All right. Well, of course, we want to thank you for watching as always, and we'll see who's right with our predictions coming up next week.
The Nitwits have been brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona, just ask rental, buy what you want, rent what you need. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Salaney Orthodontics, Dr. Reed and Salaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor specializing in distributing a full line of food service products to restaurants, schools, and institutions throughout central Pennsylvania. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. by FightOnState.com. As close as you get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.